Hello, are you a doctor who teaches others, students, other doctors? If so, your traditional approach to face-to-face teaching has either changed or is about to change. Now, a website can be a great way to move your teaching online and keep connected with your students. But you've probably avoided doing this before for a whole bunch of reasons. So I've teamed up with Will Middleton from WP Course Guide to help you out. In this course, we are going to look at options for getting you up and running with your own website in a minimum amount of time with a minimum number of hassles. We're going to focus on setting up a simple website where you can post your own content and resources and keep in touch with your students, with the option to add in other relevant functions down the track, such as videos and online courses. Now, when you are looking at setting up a website to store content, your best option for doing this is something called a CMS, or content management system. Will, could you please talk us through what a CMS is and what the options might be for a doctor educator?
Hi, I'm Will Middleton, and just like Anthony said, we're going to cover the top 4 CMS tools for building your website. CMS stands for Content Management System, and it pretty much means that rather than having to code your website, you can build it using a tool, a CMS. So let's dive into the top 4. We're going to cover WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, and Weebly. So on your screen now, you can see the pros and cons chart we put together here, and this kind of goes through the pros and cons of each one and why we lean towards WordPress. So the first one, let's cover WordPress here. So WordPress offers great SEO optimization. Indexing is quick, and there's a suite of plugins to help you get your SEO up. And then there's plugins for everything. So if there's something specific you want to do with your WordPress website, there's a plugin for it, such as building out an LMS, if you want to offer online courses. If you want to maybe add your email list into the back end of your website, you can do that. And pretty much anything under the sun you can do there. All right, and then next is extensive support. Since so many people use WordPress, roughly 33% of the internet's powered by WordPress. So since there's so many users, there's support for everything. There's freelancers who offer WordPress services such as myself. There's communities, forums, and all sorts of things like that on Facebook and all social media platforms there. And then LMS integration is a big one, just like I talked about before. If you want to move your content from a blog into a course structure and maybe have a paywall, an LMS might be something you want to put together your courses with. And that is a huge advantage of WordPress. Let's dive into the cons. So there is a bit of a learning curve to WordPress. Being one of the most flexible tools does come with a few complexities, but with the course me and Anthony are putting together here, we're aiming to mitigate how hard that process is. And it allows you to follow along click by click here, making that process a little bit easier while still allowing you to have that flexibility WordPress offers. Then it is easy to have too many plugins. That's a con of WordPress. Some people will dive into the site, they'll get overwhelmed by the tech, and they'll just install everything, all the plugins, a bunch of themes, and that can slow down your website. But keeping it to a minimum of about 15 plugins or less is optimal. And really just adding them in as you have to is a great rule of thumb. And then managing your hosting. Managing your own hosting is something you have to do with WordPress, and we'll cover that in this course. But at the start, that is a disadvantage because it's 2 tools you have to manage. You have to manage WordPress and you have to manage your hosting. But over time, that actually becomes a pro, that it becomes an advantage because as you scale your platform, you can easily switch your host. If you start out on maybe a $10 or $30 a month hosting plan, and eventually you need to upgrade to a $100 a month hosting plan to accommodate hundreds of thousands of visitors, then that migration is super easy using WordPress, whereas one of these other tools that would be a little bit harder. All right, let's dive into Wix. So the pros of Wix, it's very easy to set up, and it's got a great out-of-the-box page builder. So it's super easy to get started. The disadvantages are that it's harder to switch themes after publishing, so changing your layout later on if you want to revamp things can be a little tougher. There's some slight SEO disadvantages, some technicalities of how fast indexing happens and what all you can optimize with your SEO compared to something like WordPress. And then it's not as flexible as WordPress, so there's not as many things you can do. If you want to integrate with an LMS later on and offer online courses, it'll be a bit harder using Wix because you'll have to rely on some third-party tools, whereas with WordPress, with Lifter LMS, Sensei LMS, or LearnDash, you can actually just put that right onto your website super easily with WordPress. So now on to the next one, Squarespace. So the pros of Squarespace is it's very easy to set up, just like Wix. It's great for small and simple websites, and they've got some great out-of-the-box templates. But for diving into an LMS or a complex blog or e-commerce, things can get a little tougher when you want to do those customizations. And then the cons. There's a little bit of a learning curve with a lot of settings involved with Squarespace, and site indexing can take a little bit more time with Squarespace pages. And the last one is Weebly. It's very easy to set up Weebly. They've got a great e-commerce engine, and it's a great budget option. But it's definitely not as flexible as WordPress. So with something like the course me and Anthony are putting together here, we're aiming to guide you through all of that and make that process as easy as possible while allowing you to have that flexibility. So those are the pros and cons of the top 4 CMS tools and why we lean towards WordPress. And that seems to be the best tool for doctors trying to come online with their blog content or moving that blog content into an online course.
Thanks, Will. So to recap, for a doctor educator who is thinking about creating an online web presence to house their learning resources and connect and communicate with your students, your best option for doing this is a CMS or content management system. There are several content management systems available, and whilst WordPress is not the easiest CMS to get up and running, it does offer several advantages over the other options that are available. Key amongst these is that with WordPress, you can add lots of functionality to your site, and you have the most ability and flexibility to alter the look and feel of your site, as well as maintain control over your website. Now in our next video lesson, we'll be going through the basic steps for installing a WordPress site and show you how this is actually pretty easy to do, and you don't need any really technical skills to do it. But before we finish today, in the video Will mentioned an important term, SEO. Throughout this video course, we'll be mentioning a range of terms that are important to understand if you want to have a successful presence online on the web. We'll be covering SEO in more depth in a future lesson. But briefly, SEO or search engine optimization is the process by which website developers, owners, and even bloggers and content creators take steps to ensure that people can actually find their content. SEO is sometimes referred to as organic traffic, and it relates to how search engines work. Search engines like Google and Bing and YouTube. Yes, YouTube is actually the world's second biggest search engine. So, if, for example, if you produce a blog post about how medical students and trainee doctors can write their resume, you don't want to waste all that effort. So you want to make sure that that post is written in such a way that it ranks high when someone searches for something related to this topic. The good thing about SEO is that it's basically free for you to do. The next best thing about SEO is that many people ignore SEO when they develop their sites. And there are quite a few simple and easy things that you can do to maximize your website's SEO potential and beat out the competition. One of these things is to actually use WordPress as your platform. I look forward to joining you in the next video lesson.